Hi everyone, welcome to SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining us today wherever you are in the world. It's always a pleasure to have you here. This is episode 32. I'm going to have my dear friend Emily Teague join me in a few moments. But before that, just a couple of things I want to tell you. We always love to hear where you are in the world, so get into the chats, post where you're joining from. It's always great to see all those people coming in from all over the world. People are already posting, which is fantastic. I'd also love it if you hit the subscribe button for me and hit that little bell notification. That really supports the channel, really gets people watching and viewing what we're doing here at SmugMug Live. The whole point of this is to get our community together, to keep the conversation flowing while we're not physically together in our favourite parts of the world. But coming here a couple of times a week on SmugMug Live gives us the opportunity to be together, to connect with the photographers we love, and to have a conversation about some amazing genres of photography. Later this week on Thursday, I'll be joined by Steve Brazel. He is a wonderful live music photographer. He's going to give us a presentation about the ins and outs of what it takes to be on stage, to be at concerts, to be at gigs, doing that type of photography. So that's going to be really exciting on Thursday. And then next week, we have Joshua Cripps joining us as well, who's a wonderful, wonderful landscape photographer, and he'll be giving us some insight into his adventures. But today is going to be a very, very interesting day because Emily Teague is a SmugMug Ambassador, a dear friend of mine, and just one of the most incredible photographers that I know. She covers many aspects of photography, and we're going to get into some of those aspects because some of them are kind of polar opposite from what you would expect from each other. So let's see if Emily is with us. Hi, Emily, are you there?
Hi, Alastair. Can you hear me?
I can. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am
I guess it's
good.
not good morning where you are.
It's not good morning. It's good morning somewhere. For you,
Right.
for me, it
For me, it
is.
is.
Yeah, for me, it is early evening here in Scotland, but it's morning. Well, it's afternoon for you, is it?
Technically, it's afternoon.
It's
I'm a
afternoon.
late riser, so it's, 1 p.m. is
It's
still late morning for me.
it's creative morning.
Creative morning. Yeah.
Creatives hour, early hour. You're in New York City, correct?
Yep. Yeah, in Brooklyn, New York. I just moved here a year ago from California, and so this is home now.
It's home, yeah. And how is it going? Are you all well established there now?
It's kind of a dream. Definitely relocating and finding a new client base is a fun challenge that can sometimes be very frustrating, especially with everything going on with COVID.
Yeah,
That was not a part of my first year plan of New York, but it's been really, really good. And I love it here. And I have a great roommate who's also a photographer, Brandy Nicole. I get to share this space with her. So it's a very creative space where I can also shoot, which is really important.
yeah. Well, let's have a quick look at where people are joining us from because I can see the chat window scrolling past here. So, Stephanie says hi from Quebec in Canada. Stephen says hello from Wigan. That's much closer to home for me. Heather White says hello from Denver. Juan is joining us from Mexico City. Ian Wilner says hello from Loch Winnoch. Now, Loch Winnoch is a very Scottish name. That's the Ian is obviously very close to where I am. Matthew's in Ontario, Canada. Hello from China. There's a lovely comment. Thomas, a good friend of mine, says hello, Alastair. Miss you, dude. Thank you so much, Thomas. I hope things are good in Brazil. They're kind of crazy all over the world, so I hope you really are staying safe and sound, everyone, wherever you are, especially you, Thomas. Julie, Julia Chu says hi, Emily.
Oh,
Cesar says hey, Emily and Brandy. So Brandy's
what a
getting
good
shout outs
group.
in here as well. Brandy's saying hello, hello, friends. So, oh my goodness, Brittany's in New Orleans. We have people from all over the world.
That's so cool.
Tijuana, Mexico.
Nice. We've got
Yes.
a good mix.
Yeah. Brandy Nicole says she's in Brooklyn. I guess she must be close to you.
She's about 10 feet away in her bedroom right now.
James Augustine's in Arizona. Julia's in Florida. Oh my goodness. Right. We have lots of people joining us. So no pressure, Emily. No
No pressure
pressure
at all.
whatsoever. I am going to say that Emily, like, is, in a big city. She's in New York City. So her internet stream is not quite as crisp as it could be, but we will bear with you.
Everyone in New York using it.
Everybody's on here watching you. That's what it is. Everybody's desperate to see what we're going to talk about. So I did mention. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm excited. That's all.
I'm excited too. So I mentioned at the top of the show that you are a SmugMug Ambassador, and you've been on our Ambassador program now for a few years. We first met...
At least three or four?
3 or 4 years, maybe. Yeah, probably 4 years. We first met at the photography show in Birmingham in England. I think that was the first time we met. And
yeah, it was instant friendship.
Instant friendship. But I was instantly blown away by the incredible photography that you do. I just couldn't believe, and forgive me, but I couldn't believe that someone so young had such a diverse portfolio. And I don't mean that in an ageist way, but you know, your portfolio was so extensive and just incredible work that I was actually felt really old and ready to retire.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. I think I was 20 or 21 when we met.
Yeah, so was I. I think I was 20, 21, something.
You were just taller. That was the only difference.
Yeah, I was just very tall for my age. That's what it is. There's my goodness, a great crew. Brandy says we've got quite a crew on here. We certainly have. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. This is great. At any point today, if you have questions, please put them in the chat window. Emily has said there is nothing you can't ask her. She knows everything, and just put...
I don't know about that.
Just put all the questions you want in there, and we'll certainly get them to her. You can really help me in the chat. Because the chat's so busy, you can really help me find your question by starting the question with the word question dash and then put your question. That way when I scroll through, I can find those a bit easier. That really helps me to locate them. And I'll try and ask them when they're appropriate, or we can maybe do a big Q&A at the end if we don't get to them all. We are so thrilled that you use the SmugMug platform to host and share your work, Emily. And I think we're going to start by having a look at some of your work and give those people that maybe don't know who you are a little insight into the work that you do, and then we'll start going through some of the sort of process of what it takes to create a fashion editorial shoot. But let's have a look at some of your work first, if you want to share your screen.
Yep, let's see if this works.
Oh, here's a great question. I know the answer to this. Heather White asks, what is the answer of life? It's actually 42. That is the answer.
I was worried that might be one of the questions.
Yeah, that's an easy one. 42 is the answer to that. Hopefully everybody gets that reference.
So Alastair, can you see my screen right now?
I can. There we go. We can see your website.
To my website. So yeah, again, I've been using SmugMug for 3 or 4 years now, and it's such a pleasure. I think one of the nicest things is I had an idea for exactly what I wanted my website to look like. And at first, when I tried to put it together, I was struggling a little bit, and I was like, oh, I can't do this, or I can't do this. And then I would email someone from the help team, and they would immediately be like, oh yeah, all you do to do exactly that is this, this, this. And it was like really easy. And so I bugged the help team a ton to make my website exactly like this. And Alastair, I don't know if you can see your head right now. I'm just moving you to my bottom right-hand corner.
No, that's just your website we've got just now.
Great. Okay, yep. That sounds good. So I'm just going to scroll down just to kind of give you guys an overall look at my work. It's a lot of fashion and portrait work. I come from a portrait background originally, and so you can kind of see the two elements mixed together here a little bit. This is from a shoot I did in Cape Town on the left over here. On the right, we have a shoot that I did in Los Angeles. These are both editorials. And editorials are really where I get excited because you get to tell a story. And I think for so long, I was really focused on just a single image for a shoot. And something that I've been working on in the past couple of years is actually having a series of images to tell a story better. So yeah, just going to keep sliding down here. This one down here with the guy is actually on my rooftop. So part of the benefit of living in Brooklyn is rooftop access is very easy to come by. So if I don't want to shoot in my studio and for some reason I don't want to go out and about, I can just walk up to my roof and have that right there. You've got that instant photo set right upstairs on your roof. That it's pretty cool nice, urban setting. That's awesome. Yeah. Hopefully there's not too much lag as I'm scrolling through these.
No, it's looking okay. There's a face I recognized. Beautiful Anya Auntie you just scrolled past.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, Anya is another amazing photographer. She's a fine art photographer, also based here in Brooklyn, not too far from where Brandy and I are located. And yeah, that is, I keep thinking that we're almost to the bottom and then I just keep scrolling.
Like I said, your portfolio is really extensive, and it's just incredible work from all those different genres.
Thanks, Alastair.
Oh,
Yeah.
we
So
have
that
we have
is,
a cool question while you're talking about your website. It's going to look like a bit like a planted question because it's from Brandy.
oh no.
What do you think are some of the most important things to keep in mind when building a site in regards to fashion?
Yeah, I think different things to look for. One, and this is going to be the same thing that I talk about all day. Really, this is just going to be an hour of me repeating this one line. Keeping it cohesive, and really looking at the colors and how they play around each other. The way that I have my site set up is I really want, and the same goes for my Instagram, I want everything to kind of move together nicely. So down at the bottom here, I have these warmer toned images. We have a desert on the right. This was near Joshua Tree. On the left, there's another desert that's closer to Los Angeles. But even though these are totally different shoots with different themes, they kind of feel like cohesive to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Up here, we're still having warmer tones. Backgrounds are kind of these beigey almond colors. Slowly, we're getting a little bit paler, going into blues. And so all throughout my site, I'm just really trying to be deliberate about what images are going where. We have some blues here as well. And then I love the way that this blue and gold kind of go together. You can see this top left image, we have some nice gold there. And then on this bottom row, even though it's still blue, we start getting these elements of gold. Like in that third image, you have the gold molding on the background. On that first image, there's a little bit of yellow in her dress. So really just trying to keep it cohesive. And also being really aware of what you're trying to say to your client who is going to your website, right? Because ultimately they're the ones who you're trying to impress.
Right.
So things that I'm looking for, like on the left, this was a campaign I did for a sunglass company. And looking at it, the sunglasses are the first thing that your eyes go to, right? On the right, looking at the dress, the necklace, the styling. So just being deliberate about who is seeing your website and what you want them to see.
Yep.
Hopefully that answers that.
I definitely love the way all the tones just bleed into each other and gradually transition, and there's nothing jarring. It's very deliberate. So very nicely put together. I wonder if we could talk about that. In fact, keep scrolling up for me. I think that one with the gold, the wall with the blue and gold.
Yes.
You mentioned that earlier on, but I think was that a shoot that you did for Ellen Chrome, I think, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was for their ELC 125 and 500 campaign. And actually, later on in this live, I'm actually going to go into Capture One and show you that shoot and kind of show you my rating system and how I go through those. So you'll see some more from that set, but it won't be quite as polished as that edited version.
Yeah. See, I'm really good at this. Like, it's almost like a professional segue. Like, I love that image. Well, I'm going to talk about that later. That worked out really nicely. This is all going to look super scripted.
Right.
So yeah, your site is beautiful, but this is just one element of your site, the fashion work. But you have quite a few elements that you photograph and quite a few genres, right?
Right. So if you see at the top, this is my fashion and portrait work, which if you go to my website, that's going to be the first thing you see. I also have my documentary work. I have been really lucky and fortunate to travel all around the world. I am at 30 countries now and counting, and I'm ready to get to 50 before I turn 30. So that's the goal. But all around the world, I do photography, right? And it kind of gives me this purpose when I'm traveling, because most of the time I'm traveling alone. For extended amounts of time, and that can get pretty lonely. I'm an introvert and I love my alone time. But after about 2 weeks of being alone, like it kind of starts getting to you, right? And I always want to explore, but sometimes it feels weird to go out without a purpose. And so when I have my camera on me, that gives me purpose, and I will set rules for myself. So actually, I'm going to go over to the documentary work and show you. These are some street portraits I did in Cuba. This was actually for, this project was related to the Eugene Smith grant. And I'm just going to go through some of these. So I'm going and I'm making sure that I'm out at the best time of light. So all these images are really beautiful and soft. Fortunately, there was a lot of shade going on. So I'm always looking for like these kind of shaded areas where even though I'm working with natural light, I can kind of play with it a little more than I would if it was just harsh sunlight. And so for this project, it was the first time going to a country where I could actually speak the language. My Spanish is pretty rough, but enough to get by. And so I just started talking to a bunch of people. And at first I was really afraid to do it because I was like, are they going to think I'm weird? Like, what if I say something with terrible grammar, but everyone was really friendly. And so the way that I would do this is that I would go to the person first and say, hi, I'm doing this project. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? And then we would just start having a conversation. I always ask people if I can take their picture before I do. I think that's really important. Consent, very important. And mostly the way that I'm doing that, especially if I'm in other countries like India or countries where I don't know the language, is I will just point at my camera, point at them, and then they'll normally give me like a nod. And if they give me a nod, I will take their image. If not, then you just move on, right? It's not worth it to make someone feel uncomfortable because taking images of someone, if someone takes an image of me without asking me, I feel uncomfortable. And the same goes for most people, right? It's an invasion of privacy. So it is really important to start that conversation first.
Yeah, these are cool. There's a question, there's actually many questions coming in. So I am probably going to have to interrupt you quite a bit because I love it when people get engaged in the chat and start asking us questions. And just to let everybody know, if I do the questions out of order, it's just because I think that question is pertinent to something that is being spoken about at the moment. And I will come back to the other questions. James Burnett is in the chat. Hi, James.
Hi, James.
He asks, how do you divide your site to feature both fashion editorials and commissioned street projects to make it look comfortable together?
Totally. This has been a question for years, and I've done different methods. So I have been shooting street photography, photojournalism. I've worked for several different newspapers. I guess I've worked for 4 different newspapers at this point, and started that when I was 17 and started fashion when I was 16. So I've always had both elements to my work, right? And so when I first started, I had 2 different websites. I had my fashion on one side, my photojournalism on the other, and I was really afraid of those ever mixing, right? Just because it is such different work. And then later on, I decided that both of these are really important elements of who I am as a photographer, right? And I had clients who would see my street photography work and come to me, who were fashion clients or commercial clients, and be like, wow, we really love this. Like, why isn't this not on your website? And I would explain to them like, oh, I'm trying to keep it cohesive. And they're like, no, like, we want to see this. And so I combine them together. And I do think there's elements that cross over. So in both my fashion work and in my street work, even though in most of my fashion work, I'm working with strobes, and in most of my street work, I'm working with available light. The lighting is still very, very soft and dramatic, with these beautiful gradations between the highlights and shadows. So there are elements that still mix together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, we spoke about your fashion page, your fashion portfolio, where the colors all, seamlessly blend and make you read the page in a certain way. And your street photography, the attention you give and the treatment you give to the colors, it's unlike a lot of street photographers from people who do full-time street photography. And I would think as a client, as a fashion client, being able to see that page where you have this ability to control that element of color, control the quality of the light, but in this situation must give clients a ton of confidence that you can do that on an editorial shoot, or take that skill set and create an editorial campaign that's maybe, moves the needle a little bit for them in many ways. So I love that you have both that type of work on your site.
Totally. And I also think it's really important to include your personal work, just to it shows an element of what you're interested in, who you are as a person, right? Because you're not only getting hired for your work, right? You're getting hired a little bit for how you're going to be on set, how you're going to interact with the client. Clients want to like you as well as a person.
Absolutely.
So, and just following up on that, Brandy and I actually had a conversation over this past weekend where I said, I really want to start developing my printed portfolio and getting that out to agencies. And I've read a lot that it's important to include your personal work, right? And there's this personal work, and then I won't show it, but there's also the personal work that I did a lot more when I was in my teenage years of these elaborate headdresses. That's a little more on the fantasy side. And I thought, okay, I don't want to include that. Well, I love that work and it's important to me. I've really steered away from that, right? And cleaned and polished up my work a lot more to make it more commercial. Yeah. But I realized that at the end of my portfolio, I do want to include this work, right? For all those reasons I just said, because it shows who I am.
Yeah. And you're just reinforcing something that was said on our last episode here at SmugMug Live. Last week, we had the incredible Matthew Jordan Smith on the show. Just the most incredible master portrait photographer, shot everyone from Oprah to Aretha Franklin. And he said the exact same thing. We spoke a lot about his personal work, and he said that personal work is so important to show different sides to yourself, to show your skill set, but also to keep you fresh and keep you passionate and keep you excited about what you do. So you've really reinforced that. I'm going to give a few shout outs. There's a lot of people joining us, people you will recognize when I say their name. Some guy called David Grover says hi from the UK.
Oh, hi, David.
Hi, David. For those that you don't know, David is from Capture One. David was live streaming today and had really bad gremlins with internet. So I really hope you don't jinx us, David, by joining us here on the show. When you were, he had quite a challenge today during his live stream.
Get him out of here.
Yeah, the wonderful Dennis Dunbar is here. Hi, Dennis. We miss you.
Dennis is one of my retouchers, and a lot of work and my fashion side that I just showed you was actually retouched by Dennis. So yeah, Dennis is fantastic.
Sarah's in the house. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's joined us on so many shows. It's really great that you're here for this. I knew you wouldn't miss being here. So thank you for joining.
Is that Sarah Vento?
It is. Yeah.
Great. Hi, Sarah.
David says hi back. So lots of great comments. So there's a few more questions. Wow, there's other brands joining us. Sorry, I got distracted there. The team from Seconic are here. Hi. They say hi, Emily.
Hi, Seconic.
It's
happy.
Abs on.
That's actually also live streaming today, and I'm going to watch his. So I'm very, very grateful he is here for mine.
Oh, see, you broke up there. That's because Dave joined us. Your internet started breaking up.
No, he needs to get out of here.
Right, there's a few questions up here. Let's see. That one, James. A few of the other ones are actually asking about getting started in fashion and stuff. So maybe we'll come back to those once we start talking about setting up a fashion editorial. There's one other question here. You were talking there about your travel and going to places. There's a question here. Some guy called Pratik Naik.
My favorite humans in the entire world.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great SmugMug Ambassador. Hi, thanks for joining us, Pratik. And he says, what is your next place you want to visit? And why is it Costa Rica? There's a loaded one.
Pratik and I are definitely going to Costa Rica. We haven't figured out when yet, but that's going to happen very soon. But other than Costa Rica being my very first choice, and this kind of relates into what I'm about to talk to next. Again, this all feels very scripted, and I swear it's not.
It's flowing very well together. Thank you for all these questions.
Yeah. So the next area that I am supposed to go to, and I was actually supposed to go back in December, and then it got delayed, and then I was supposed to go in the spring, and then COVID happened. So right now it's kind of up in the air of when this is going to happen. But I'm going to Haiti and the Dominican Republic to work with an organization called Free the Slaves. And and Alastair, I know you're thinking what I am, but like this really leads into our next topic well.
No, I do. I know, and obviously I know about the project because we wanna support it and come with you if we can. So, so why those specific places? What drew you
Well, I
to that?
guess just to give a little background, so Free the Slaves is an international NGO that I've been working with for several years now. The first project we did was together in Ghana, and they focus on modern day slavery, which is also referred to as trafficking. The project that I did with them in Ghana was in fishing villages, and it focused on labor trafficking. So there's this huge issue where kids are being taken from families, and I guess what will normally happen is someone will come to a small village that's pretty isolated and say, hey, going to a parent and saying, hey, we know that you are in desperate need of money and you want to support yourselves, you want to support your other kids. Give us one of your kids and we will put them in school and we'll provide them with this great life and we'll send you X amount of money every month. And normally that equates to about $30 every month, right? And so these parents are like, okay, this is great. Like my kid gets an education, I get to keep care of the rest of my kids. Like this is fantastic.
It's an offer they can't refuse, really.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a lie.
Yeah.
And these kids are taken away to this area in northern Ghana called Lake Volta, which is, I think it's the second largest man-made lake in the world. And put into these fishing villages, and kids are there anywhere from like 4 years old to 18 years old. And it's just this really vicious cycle where, kids who are 18, who are adults now, often become slave masters themselves. And it's just this terrible cycle. Yeah. So I worked on that project with them. And since then all my personal projects around human rights are focused on trafficking now, which kind of leads me into talking about our next project. So a couple years back now, I was talking with Free the Slaves again about doing a project in India, this time focused on sex trafficking. And I actually went to SmugMug and said, hey guys, this is the project. And I think at the time we were just talking about it, you and I, Alastair, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do in a couple months, telling you all about it. And you were like, yeah, we want to support that. Like that is everything that.
I couldn't believe it. Talking to you, I can't remember where we were. I think we were in New York together.
We were.
And you started telling me about your idea. And I was left in awe, Emily. You leave me in awe so many times looking at your work, and I couldn't believe that you were going to do this project. And I felt really humble that I would never think of, doing that type of work. And we need people like yourself who are willing to tell those stories, and we love at SmugMug supporting the telling of stories. That's what we do with our photography. So as soon as you mentioned you were going there, I just like, how can we support you? How can we help? And we were delighted to help fund you to go tell the story of the trafficking. And if you want to share some of those images, I think people will be blown away by the images that you captured there.
I have this pulled up right now. So just a little bit of background on this. I worked actually with several different organizations on this project, with Blossomy, with Shonlop, Hamari Muskan, which is focused on children, Her Future Coalition, and Bachan Bapar. That's the only one that I forget the pronunciation of, unfortunately. But we did this project across 4 different cities. So I started in New Delhi. Then I went to the middle of India to the capital of Bihar, which is Patna, which is a pretty small city that no tourist would ever go to because it's pretty rough. It's one of the few areas that I've traveled to where I have been a bit more scared, just because it's definitely on the rougher side and it's a major hub for sex trafficking. From there, I went to a small village called Muzaffarpur. And after that to Kolkata, and then over to Jaipur, where a couple hours away was another small village that has a kind of a refugee center. So I'm just going to go through some of these images. As more background, all of their faces are covered to protect their identity. And so that was another tricky thing of figuring out how to document these portraits and interview these girls, but also make sure that wasn't putting them in danger.
Because that was one of the things we discussed very early in the project was, we want to help you go tell these stories and we want to help you share those stories when you come back. but we also have to protect the people that are in the images. And
Absolutely.
when you were on the ground there, you suddenly come up with all these concepts to show or not show the people. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, so these with the leaves were all at one center. And then this was in Kolkata. This is in a red light district where they've set up educational programs to kind of teach children early on what trafficking is, how to look out for those signs, and just give them a safe place to go to where these kids can tell these adults if anything is going on. And it just tries to really protect them from what could happen. This is Mujaffarpur, that's that kind of small city village that I mentioned. This is within their red light district. This is Shauna Sinha, who has become a really close, dear friend of mine. She's a human rights activist and lawyer based in Patna, a part of the High Court there. And I started communicating with her before I went on this trip. And the first time we talked together, I was so intimidated, right? Because she is just brilliant and so smart and comes off, a little on the cold side. And then maybe within the first day of working together, we just like fell in love with each other. And she inspires me so much. She's been working on this her entire career, and just such an inspiring person. This is Rani Begum. She's also part of that red light district that I just showed you. She is what's called an ex-courtesan. So she had gotten involved in trafficking when she was younger, and as an adult was able to break away from it, and now is there for other girls as kind of a guardian to them. Mm-hmm. This was a village a couple hours away from Jaipur, where again they're setting up educational programs and trying to get these teenagers and younger kids involved with them to protect them. And then just some more portraits. These were in Kolkata with Hamari Muskan.
There's a question came in. There's quite a few questions that I'll ask about while you're on this section of work. James Burnett was asking, what made you use leaves to cover their faces?
It was one of those those difficult decisions of like, okay, how do we take these photos and protect their identities? And it wasn't completely planned. So like in this photo, you can see I just cropped it in a way where you can't see her face, right? But there were these really massive leaves that were just fantastic. And I was like, okay, great, So that was a very last minute decision.
Right. So there's no huge significance to the leaves other than they're just something locally available.
Nope, it was just these work. They're big enough to cover a child's face good.
Yeah. And listen, if anybody's joining in late to the chat, we promise we will get to talking about, creating a fashion editorial, but we can't have Emily on the show without setting the scene and giving some of this background, and all this work does relate back to everything Emily does. And there was a question relating to that. Blaine asks, Blaine Deutsch. Hi, Blaine.
Another one of my favorite humans in the world.
Lots of awesome humans in the chat today. Do lessons learned in your humanitarian work inform your fashion work at all?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it affects me as a person, right? And so I'm trying to think about anything specific that I've learned within humanitarian work that directly affects it. And I might have to sit and think, and then like halfway through this live, I'll jump back in and be like, oh, actually, there's this.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but immediately I would say, definitely, of course. And I think there's crossover, right? So just like I was saying with the other photojournalism work, I'm always looking for really soft, flattering light. Anyone that I'm documenting, I always want to kind of elevate them, right? I never want to photograph someone in a way that's demeaning or diminishes them. So just like with my fashion work, where I'm trying to make these models look as fantastic as possible, I'm doing the same with every subject that I photograph.
Excellent. A couple of questions here. One from Heather White. What kind of equipment do you take with you on these international projects? And someone else asked the same question. Well, in fact, Heather asked it twice. That's what it was.
I better answer that one then.
Well, just answer it once.
Yeah. So I travel very, very light. Again, I've traveled all around the world, but I've done it on an extreme budget. And I use Google Flights to make sure I'm getting like these ridiculously low price flights, and I don't check baggage because that's extra money. So It's very, whatever I'm doing, I have to be very lightweight. And because I'm not checking baggage and I don't have these heavy suitcases full of all of my equipment, I also have to make sure everything's protected and secure. So the only things that I'm traveling with is my 5D Mark III. I usually have a couple of different lenses. I think everything with this project I shot on the 24 to 70 2.8. And then I normally, for all my street photography, I'm often shooting with the 35 millimeter 1.4. And that is about it. I actually, for this one, I was working with a flash. And I think I might have had like a little softbox as well. If you go to my website on my blog and you scroll down a little bit, I do have what I used to use as my travel lighting setup, which is really, really simple. It's just like a monopod that gets about the size of my forearm, a simple speed light, and just a little collapsible. At the time I was using a Westcott Octa. So that was what I used in the past. If I do this, I guess the next time that I do a project like that, I might elevate that. It's very simple, pretty cheap. That entire setup of the monopod, the speed light, the softbox, all of that stuff, the transmitter receiver is only about $300, which for lighting is definitely on the cheaper side. So
I think,
but most of it is natural light. I will say that.
Yeah, I think future projects would probably have some kind of Elinchrom
I know.
in there.
Yeah, right. I've changed over the years. It's been very nice.
Yeah, give a shout out to the other brands that you support. I'm very, very happy to do that. We love the team at Elinchrom. Dave Grover says, I see a smaller mirrorless in your future. I wonder what kind of mirrorless camera that might be. Maybe something Canon-y?
Definitely Canon-y. Yeah. So I recently got to shoot the Canon R6 campaign and love the R6, but I'm still, if I had the choice between a DSLR and mirrorless, I'm still on the DSLR side just because, and this is a silly reason, but I love the optical viewfinder, right? So I haven't been able to get used to the EVF yet. But David's always trying to get me to switch to mirrorless.
Yeah. No. You'll get there one of these days. So that was questions about that. I don't think there's anything else. That's awesome. I mean, we were so delighted to support you. I mean, our involvement was almost irrelevant, right? I mean, you went there.
I agree. I think talking to you guys was so helpful.
No, I mean, we were blown away and just could not do anything other than support you because it was such an amazing cause, and hopefully we get the chance to support you again with your work in Haiti whenever that gets back on the schedule. So we look forward to that. The folks that are watching, you show your appreciation for this project. Give a like in the YouTube channel just to show how much you love this work that Emily did. It was just leaves me in awe. I repeat myself, but it really does. So thank you for doing that project and for sharing it with the world and for making a difference. Absolutely.
Thanks, Alastair. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. So we're going to change things up a little bit and maybe get to the topic of the day.
Yeah.
So do you want to stop sharing your screen just for a second?
Sure thing.
And we'll bring you back up onto the main screen.
I know you can see yourself right now. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I've switched back to the main screen, but if you stop just now. So there was a few questions came in that maybe we can start off the next part of the conversation with. Again, just to reiterate, if you're going to ask a question, it really helps if you put the word question right at the start of your question, because it helps me find it in amongst all the chat. There was a question about how do you get started in fashion photography. Let me find who it was. Sorry, I'm blanking. There's just so much great chat. Can't sort of see who said that, but there's a few questions about how did you get started in the fashion world.
So at least for me, again, my background is in portrait photography, and I focused on that for a long time. But even in my first couple of years of doing portrait photography, I was still very interested in fashion. but the kind of fashion that I was interested in at the time was more on the fantasy side, right? And so to me, fashion was like elaborate. It was this magical thing, and that's why I was going for like these massive headdresses and all of that. But I guess the first thing that I did, I'm from a small town originally, Chico in Northern California. It's about 100,000 people, so not ideal for fashion work. But I did have a pretty decent portrait portfolio, and I think that's the first step, right? Is having good work already before you jump straight into fashion work. So I had a good portfolio, and then I went on a site, and I'll talk about this more later on too, called Model Mayhem. And it's a site where you can find models, makeup artists, stylists, hairstylists, just everyone, right? It's like social networking for that creative group. And so I started going on there when I was about 17, and I would post these casting calls. And I started just in Chico, and keep in mind, not a ton of people in Chico on there, but there was a good amount, right? For 100,000, I guess for smaller cities, it could be even harder for sure. But then I guess you kind of go to your nearby cities. And so I would say, hey, I want to do this shoot. This is the time that I'm doing it at. It's just what's called a test shoot, which is you are getting it in your portfolio and everyone else gets it in their portfolio. So there's no money involved, right? And so I did a lot of those. And then once I had a little bit more of what felt like fashion to me at the time, I would travel down to Los Angeles, where my brother lived conveniently, and stay with him. I would take a bus because, of course, I didn't drive at the time. And so it was like a 13-hour, like taking a bus to a train to a bus to another bus just to get down to Los Angeles so I could shoot. I think that's the thing with photography is you have to really be obsessed, right? And unfortunately I am. And so it just like consumes my life, and it's all I want to do. So I'm willing to sit on 13-hour bus rides just to like get to an area that has real models. So I was either probably 17 when I did my first shoot with a quote unquote real model. And again, I was on Model Mayhem. She had done professional modeling, and I was so intimidated to work with her, right? Because I was just nervous that I would mess up this shoot. And I think in those early days, I would sit for like an hour before the shoot and just be like, oh my God, like, am I going to mess this up? But I started bringing in more models through there. I started meeting hair and makeup artists and kind of building relationships with hair and makeup artists. So that way, each time I went down to Los Angeles, I'd be able to work with makeup artists that I'd worked with before and slowly start bringing on more team members. And then again, once I had even better work with more of a fashion feel, I would go back to Chico, and then I started kind of looking at the commercial market. So I started reaching out to local boutiques and trying to see if they would pay me to shoot for them. And that was also really helpful, right? So, with fashion, you have to have that commercial mindset for it. So yeah, I think my best advice, that was a long tangent, but reaching out to local boutiques is really helpful. Reaching out to sites online, finding designers who don't have massive followings and reaching out to them and being like, hey, would you like me to shoot your stuff? And you can approach it 2 or 3 different ways, right? If you're still kind of building your portfolio and trying to get good work, you can approach them and say, hey, can you send me some of your pieces and I'll shoot them and I'll give you the images in exchange. Or if you are trying to pitch them, then that's something else. Then you're like, hey, I'm really interested in shooting your work. I feel like it would match my style and we could really benefit each other. Are you interested in this? And, that would be my advice.
That's great. And that answered a few questions.
Good answer.
No, but it answered a few questions. I put one up there from Matthew, who had asked how you got started, and Shamita asked that some tips as well. But as Emily gets into this next part of the presentation, I'm sure she'll answer a lot more questions that will help you get started in fashion and give you some real insight into that. Dave Grover asked a question. What was your big break?
Oh man, I don't know if I've had it. Like there's always that moment of like, when have you made it? And I think I'll be asking myself that for the rest of my life, right? There's definitely been bigger shoots where I'm like, okay, I think I've got the hang of this. Like, I don't have to freak out and sit for an hour before a shoot because I'm worried about messing it up, right? And that was kind of one of the biggest feelings of relief, is when I started doing shoots, knowing that I was going to come out with good work, right? Like, that is such a good feeling.
Yeah.
I guess even in the past year, doing more campaign work, like for talking about David, for Capture One, for Ellen Chrome, for Canon, that's felt really good.
That was what David wanted to used to say,
I
probably.
think so.
He just
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
ended up
say, when I
saying
got
it.
to work for
Oh, he
Capture
just wants
One.
to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was our big break, Dave. Nothing to do with SmugMug. It was all about Capture One.
Man, we got to kick him out of this chat.
No, I'm still waiting for my big break. One of these days I'll get to work with David. Joking. We actually had him on the show a few weeks ago, talking about all the new things in Capture 120.
That was a good live one.
It was a good live one.
I love when you do these. It's always nice to tune in. So I'm glad I can be on the other side of it today.
Right. Shall we let you get into the flow of this presentation? And
Sounds good.
then I'll add.
So I'm going to share my screen again.
Yeah.
Let's just.
You do break up ever so slightly now and again, but I'm sure people will forgive you.
I'm glad. If I start breaking up too much, just yell at me and I'll stop talking.
I'll yell at Dave Grover and tell him to get out of the chat.
Good.
Tell Brandy to get off Netflix. That's probably.
I know. I think she's streaming too much. Okay, I am sharing my screen here.
Yep. Once it's up, I will switch over.
Okay, let me know when it is up.
We can see Pinterest.
Yep, welcome to Pinterest, one of my mini Bibles. So for me, I'm just going to break out how to do an entire shoot, right? Focusing on an editorial. For me, the first part of doing a shoot is starting with an idea or a concept. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. First, inspiration, right? Which is where Pinterest falls into all of this. Getting inspired either by your model. Maybe your model has a really unique feature and she's the thing that inspires you, and then you start adding your team that way. Or maybe you're working with a makeup artist and they're doing a particular look. There's all these different ways to get started, right? Like I could keep listing out everything. You can get inspired by other people's photos. You can get inspired by music, by history, by stories, by your own history, like growing up. There's just endless amounts of inspiration. Another helpful tip, if you ever are kind of feeling stuck and you don't know how to shoot or what direction to go in, I will get a little notebook and I'll start writing down every word that I think is beautiful or inspiring. So for example, I'll write down something like, these are just words that I love, right? Fire, gold, feathers, spark, running. I'll write down all these different words and I'll just kind of stare at them and then I'll pick one, right? So let's say I pick fire. And then I think about the emotions attached to fire. I think about fierce, angry, passion. I'll go in that direction. So now I have a mood, right? And then once I have kind of a mood or a color palette in my head, anything like that, that's when I start building a mood board. So this is my Pinterest. I have all these different mood boards from all these different shoots I've done, but I'm going to show you a couple recent ones that I've made. So switching over. This is one that I have coming up in September, which I'm very excited for. And something that's important with making a mood board is, again, I'm just going to talk about this the entire time, making sure it looks cohesive, right?
Yep.
So if we look at this mood board, all of these colors and tones really go together, even though a lot of these are different shoots, it all kind of feels like one, right? And I'm looking at the colors, I'm looking at the style. So a mistake that I made early on when I was making mood boards is I was making them entirely for myself, right? Because I wanted an idea of what I was doing, and then I would send it off to my team and be like, great, this is what we want to do. And the mood boards make sense to myself because each image had a different idea or connotation attached to it. But for my team, I think it was probably a little confusing because they're seeing these really different images, right? Even though it made sense in my head, it didn't make sense for them. So now when I'm creating mood boards, I really want to make sure, one, of course, that it makes sense for me, that I know exactly the mood, the direction that I want to go in, but also that it makes sense for my stylist, right? So if you look, all of these clothes, it's like fall, autumn, it feels like it goes together. And so when my stylist is pulling clothes, she can look and be like, okay, I know that Emily likes this texture. She's using a lot of images that have like these flowy dresses. So it really helps her, right?
Yep.
Also, I'm looking at the mood. Like in all of these images, there's kind of like this almost melancholy mood going on. And so that's going to help my model to know what I want her to portray. For makeup, this all looks pretty natural, right? There's nothing too crazy, anything like that. Same with hair. It's a pretty natural look, right?
Yeah. Can I just say that this entire mood board in this campaign, you need to shoot this in Scotland. This
I know. I
this just
really
shouts
do. That's
Scotland Highlands to me. So come on, let's do it over
that's
here.
the only frustrating thing is I'm gonna try to shoot this in upstate New York, and in my head I'm like, no, I need to get over to Europe. So yeah, when I go visit you, I'm definitely shooting this campaign,
Yeah,
this mood board again.
definitely looks like the Scottish Highlands. Got that feel to it.
So that's one example. Skipping over to my next one. Again, totally different, completely different concept, but still very cohesive, right? So if you look, I have all these really delicate, like almost angelic, feminine kind of clothing. Again, similar mood. This one's a little more playful. My last one was a little bit melancholy, and there's still a couple melancholy. Like this is, if you can see where my cursor is, that one's a little sad. but then there's these others, like this one feels almost a little playful to me. This one feels a little playful. This is playful. This is playful. You have like these little smirks, right? So again, when I'm sending this out to my team, my model can see this and be like, okay, that gives me a good idea. It's still very reserved, but there's that little bit of playful emotion in there. Again, for my stylist, she can look through and be like, okay, Emily definitely wants kind of these really light rosy colors, a lot of white. Maybe there is a little bit of black elements mixed in there, but only kind of as an accent color. But yeah, all of this feels very cohesive, right? Going to skip over to this next one. This is the last mood board that I'll show you. And also mood boarding is just my favorite thing to do. So as I'm looking through these, I'm like, guys, this cool. So I hope you think this is as cool as I do. Same thing. Very cohesive colors. This one kind of has more of like this Gucci feel. I've actually added a lot of images from Gucci campaigns in here. It's like these bold, rich colors that are really beautiful. And so again, like all of these mood boards are different, but it also all feels like work that I really like, right? That would fit nicely into my portfolio. The idea behind this concept was kind of like these rich teenagers out to party, and they're just like a little apathetic, right? Just like totally different world than I can imagine, but that kind of adds to the fantasy of it, right?
Yeah. Mood boarding's a bit like I'm forgetting the word. Like when people used to stick things in books. What's the can't think. Scrapbooking. Right?
Yeah,
It's
totally.
very
Yep.
like that. There's
Yeah. And so for some,
sorry,
okay.
question about Pinterest. James Burnett
Mm-hmm.
says, in Pinterest, do you search by multiple or single words for image ideas?
It depends. So normally what I'm doing, that's actually a very good question. That kind of leads me into my next point. So thank you for that. Let's say I start with a single image, right? That really kind of represents my idea. So maybe it is, let's say this image right here. If you guys can see where my mouse is hovering, it's like this gold jacket, this really elegant furniture, all of that. So I'll start with that image, and then I will go to the bottom and find some ideas for this board. This is really, really helpful. So if you click on this, this little highlighted area here, it'll show all these similar images with similar colors or similar campaigns. And that's really helpful to start adding. And the more images that you have, the easier that's going to be. So for example, maybe you add this one image and you're not quite finding similar ideas yet, and you just kind of start looking around. Maybe you look at this exact campaign. It looks like this is a campaign from Free People. So you reverse image search, find this image, find the other images from this editorial, and add them in. And you can kind of start seeing more similar images down here. But let's say there's still no similar images, then I'll try something like, I guess, again, for this one, I'm going very Gucci inspired. So I'd say like Gucci photo shoot. So yeah, depending on what it is, I'm not afraid to use multiple terms to search for.
Good answer. Cool. I started lots of chat about the Scottish Highlands. So I love seeing the chat in there.
Should we plan a trip there?
Definitely, I would love to have you all come to the Scottish Highlands once
That's
it's safe
where
to do
our
so.
next retreat is going to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't fly to the US, and nor can the US fly here. So at the moment, we're completely stuck. But Gary Monroe, very Scottish name, Gary, says Newfoundland is North America. Scotland is indeed. Newfoundland is incredible. So,
Hey, Renee Robin is based there, isn't she?
yeah, she's actually over there just now with Curtis. She's typically, our home is Alberta over in the west, but yeah, they're in Newfoundland at the moment. And Newfoundland is just incredible part of the world. And James Burnett says the Highlands are beautiful. Isle of Skye is perfect for this kind of shoot. It is indeed. If you want to get some inspiration about the Isle of Skye, here on this YouTube channel that you're watching this live stream on, go watch out one of our SmugMug films that we did with our dear friend Lizzie Gadd. We filmed a wonderful SmugMug film about Lizzie and her self-portrait work, and it was entirely shot on the Isle of Skye. So if you want to get some inspiration about the Isle of Skye and the Highlands, go watch that film. Once you finish watching this live stream, don't do it just now. Stay here with Emily.
Yep. And then the one final thing that I'll say about mood boarding, and actually my dear sweet roommate, I just secretly texted her, like, will you please give me water? So she's over in our kitchen right now getting me some water so before my throat goes away.
That's the sweetest. You should have had it there.
I finished it. I'm a gulper.
A newbie mistake not having enough water.
I should have had a gallon for me. The one final thing that I'll say about mood boarding, which is really important, as you are going super fast, pulling every kind of image you can, maybe you don't know exactly where the concept is yet. Once you have a bunch of images, what I do is I will go back and thank you so much. Just got my water.
Thanks, Brandy.
I will go back and look at the entire mood board as a whole, and make sure that it feels cohesive. So if there's any image in there that maybe I really love and I thought it was beautiful, but it doesn't fit the other images either in color, in style, in mood, I will just pull that away. And so you really want to keep editing your mood board as you go and not be afraid to take away images that, while beautiful, maybe don't exactly match this exact style. Because again, as I'm going to rant about all day, it's just about keeping it cohesive, right?
Yep.
Next part, finding a location. So are you shooting in studio? Are you shooting outdoors? If you're shooting outdoors, if you're in a city, you might have to worry about getting a permit, which is no fun at all. So just be aware about that. And again, keeping it cohesive, right? So if I'm shooting this kind of like elegant, glamorous look, I'm trying to think of an area that I wouldn't shoot this in, right? I guess I wouldn't shoot this in like an all pink room that's really bubbly and has like these playful feels, right? Because that just doesn't go together. So again, making sure everything just feels good. Finding hair and makeup. Are we ready for this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Dennis made a good comment. He said he loves mood boarding, and he uses that sometimes to help him for color grading ideas as well. So
yeah, it's super interesting. I've had a couple retouchers be like, "Oh, can you show me the mood board for this?" And at first, I didn't really understand it, and then I started being like, "Oh, that is really clever. That makes sense." So yeah, I appreciate Dennis in that.
Okay, moving on.
So setting up your team, right? Debatably the most important part of your shoot, because you want to work with really talented teams, right? So normally I will start with my hair and my makeup artist first, because those are going to be the two easiest people for me to find. Again, in the past, when I was younger, I would use Model Mayhem. There's pros and cons to Model Mayhem, right? Pro, it's free, very easy to use, tons of people on there. It's a really powerful, great resource. Especially in cities without agencies. But then the con is, generally those models aren't necessarily as reliable. I've had so many models flake on me over the years, which is always really disappointing. And sometimes I have an entire shoot together. There was a time when I was in Barcelona, actually, that I got this team together. I had a stylist. It was one of the first times working with a stylist. And the model just never showed. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's the most disappointing thing in the world.
Yep.
But once you, so that's one source. The other one is Instagram, right? Instagram is really powerful. It's this amazing tool that I didn't realize for a couple of years. But about 4 years ago, I started using Instagram instead of Model Mayhem to start finding models, start finding hair and makeup. You can either look them up through hashtags or go to other photographers that are in your area who are shooting a style that you like and start looking at the credits that they're using or the people that they're tagging in their photos. And that's another really good way to find it. The final way, which is my favorite, is going to an agency, right? Actually, I'm going to show you one more thing before I go straight there. I'm trying to jump too fast. We have about 30 more minutes, right?
Yeah, we have all the time in the world.
Great. Okay. I was telling Alastair earlier that I was afraid I would like finish all of this in 10 minutes, and I guess I was wrong.
No. And it helps when there's questions. So thank you for all the questions. That's what we feed off of. Spreadsheets.
Yep, this is my spreadsheet. I've been using a spreadsheet like this for a long time. If you look at my tabs at the bottom, I used to have one in Chico, which is my hometown. Then when I was living in Los Angeles, I created one for there. Now that I'm in New York, this is my New York one. I actually have an entirely different spreadsheet just for stylists, and I'll talk about this later. But this is really helpful. So I don't have any models listed because now I'm only working with models from agencies. And so I just have all my modeling agencies listed. And these are all different levels. It ranges from kind of boutique agencies to the top agencies. I have my makeup artist listed, my hair listed, my stylist, my assistants, and most everyone on here is hyperlinked. So if I don't know, let's say Erin Taylor is a pretty common name, it links just to her Instagram and I can immediately see what her portfolio is and see if she's right for a shoot coming up. So that is something I would really recommend. Yep. Very, very helpful. But let's go back to agencies. So let's say I have a shoot coming up. I'm going to choose an agency on here. Wilhelmina is one of my favorite agencies to work with. They're really fantastic. They're in New York, LA. I guess they're all over the place. They're one of the biggest ones. And I actually, a couple years ago, wrote a guide on how to reach out to a modeling agency for your first time. So I'm going to pull that right up here. This is on F-Stoppers, so if you want to find it, it's just a guide to reaching out to modeling agencies. And I asked a few of my friends if they could show me their example letters. And I'm actually going to show one from Tina, who is also a SmugMug Ambassador, one of my closest friends. So I just highlighted all the areas that are important things to pay attention to. So, your greeting, right? If you know the agent's name, say that. If not, you can just say, good morning or hello. Tell them who you are. Tell them what kind of photographer you are, show them your work. I would recommend showing them both your website and your Instagram. And basically assure them that you have a team set up, that there's going to be either stylist, a makeup artist, hair. They want to know that the shoot is as polished as possible, right? So don't say something like, oh yeah, we might do it this day. Like have all your details ready. Tell them what day you're going to shoot, what time you're going to shoot. Is it a half day? Is it a full day? What kind of model you're looking for. So for me, maybe I'm looking for, I guess for that Ellen Crum shoot that we were talking about earlier with the gold molding, I really wanted like a young girl, right? I wanted to kind of feel like this girl who's trapped away in a castle. And so I specified that in my letter. And then attach your mood board. I can't stress this enough. So not only is your mood board really important for your team, but it's also super important to convince an agency, right? Because they want to make sure that this shoot is beneficial for them. Just as much as it's beneficial for you. And that kind of matches the style that they're going in. So agencies tend to be on the safer side. So if you send them anything too crazy or too avant-garde, they might be a little spooked and just be like, unfortunately, we don't have any girls for you to shoot with. If there's any questions about agencies, we'd love to answer them. If not, I think I'm going to head on to our next topic here.
Yep, so hang on a sec. Let's see, there was a couple of questions. James was asking, would it be possible to have the link? I think he means maybe the link to the article. I think it's on F-Stoppers, right?
Yep.
I think that's what you mean, James. I'll put the link in the chat here while you're talking. I'll find it. I'll pull it up and put the link in.
Okay.
Assuming that's what he meant. And then, sorry, I'm going to go back to the question. This is a fun one from David Schick, who asks, have you ever run across your own image while doing and building a Pinterest mood board?
I have, yeah. There's actually a couple of my images from a shoot that I did when I was, I think, 19. It's like that. It's very fantasy. Like it's like a wood creature, Mother Earth kind of goddess image. And Pinterest has just gone crazy with that. And I find it all the time. And there's all these people who have like redone their own shoots with it. And it's always fun to see. So yeah, every once in a while I do see my images on there and I'm like, hey, where is that image credit?
That's cool. Yeah, I'm going to find this link and I'll post it in the chat window for you folks that are watching. All right, you want to move on, Emily?
Yep. Okay, so the next part, so now we've got hair, makeup, we've got our model. The hardest team member to find on a shoot is a stylist, right? And that is because they are doing the most work. I think photographers are often like, I'm doing the most work because I have to plan the shoot, produce the shoot, shoot the shoot, and then edit the shoot. But the stylist has to do even more. So they have to go days before to all these different either stores or clothing houses and pull, right? And then after the shoot, they have to be there the entire day, very active, making sure everything looks good. And then after the shoot, they have to go return those clothes, right? So it's very hard for them. It's more likely that you're going to find a stylist if you have what's called a pull letter. And this is just, it's a pull letter / it's also called a letter of responsibility. And you can get these if you have already agreed to work with a publication. So for example, the last shoot that I did, I guess the last editorial I did, I was working for Fashion Gone Rogue, and I had already built a relationship with them over the past year and a half. And I contacted them and said, hey, this is the shoot I'm going to do. This is my mood board. It's going to be autumn themed. Would you be interested in letting me do this and publishing it, right? And so the editor-in-chief says, yes, there is a pull letter. I give the pull letter to my stylist. They communicate. And then my stylist can go to different houses and use that to get really amazing garments, right? So that's one method. The other idea, so I'm going to show you my next Bible, which is models.com. If you are a fashion photographer, this is an amazing website, right? So this has everything of what's currently trending. If we scroll down here, let me find this area. It has all the latest advertising campaigns, which is just incredible. It has all the latest editorials. And so the two that I'm looking at are the latest advertising campaigns and the latest editorials. And this is really helpful for finding trends going on and kind of finding what clients are interested in right now. It's also really good if you are trying to figure out how can I take my work to that next level. To be looking at this kind of work that's getting published is very helpful for that. So another beneficial thing on this site, you can go up here and you can go to people, and then it has everyone on here. So this is kind of like a very advanced version of Model Mayhem, and not so much. But for me, what I did is I went down to, let's see where stylists are, models, actors, designers, somewhere on here. Somewhere on here there should be stylists. And I just went and I entered, let's do hairstylist for now, pretend they're stylists. This so shows you all these different stylists. And then at the top in the pro search, you can say stylist, worked with, normally I avoid this one. The one that I do look at though is locations. So I'll say stylist in New York. And then it'll show you every stylist in New York who is kind of verified, who has done bigger work. For New York, I think there are 250 stylists on here. And I spent a day going through every single one. It took a long time, but that way I could see which stylist matched my style of work, right? Because you can't just work with any stylist. You want one who has a similar aesthetic to your work.
Absolutely.
And then I got it down to about 50 that I liked, and I reached out to every single one of them. And then about 20 got back to me, which felt like a pretty good ratio. I was happy with that. And then I can find out, one, are they available for trade shoots? So if I'm working on an editorial that doesn't have a budget, then I can work with them for that. Or two, what their rate is if I'm using them for a campaign.
Cool. So, is that a free service to use, models.com?
Yep. It is. Yeah, it's very, awesome. Very cool. Definitely one of my favorite things ever. The other thing that I will mention about stylists is if you are trying to publish this work, and if you are, then it's easier to get a stylist on your team, right? So let's assume that you are. The publication is normally going to want about 6 looks minimum for an editorial. Sometimes it might go down to 4. Sometimes normally it's not going to be over 6, but 6 is kind of like that golden number. So 6 different looks. That can be 6 different outfit changes. You can keep your hair consistent the entire time or not, but you want to make sure through all those changes, even if you're changing lighting, location, wardrobe, that there's still an element that stays the same, right? Because you're telling a story and you want your story to stay cohesive. One quick water break.
Yep, I keep my hair consistent through all my shoots. It's always
so there's your consistency.
It's always the same. Nothing I can do about it.
The next thing that I'm going to show you, I keep saying there's all these Bibles, and there are. Your third Bible of the day is your call sheet, right? And so this is, I'm going to pull up one that I did recently. This is actually for the Ellen Chrome shoot that we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah.
I made sure to block out my address there.
Good call.
It just kind of shows, and normally what I should have done is added all the phone numbers for each team member, right? But it has the date, the address, the call time, the end time. It also has the call time for the team, right? Because I want my hair and makeup artist to arrive before my model so they can get everything set up. And then my model normally arrives about 30 minutes later, and then she's ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just conscious you're sharing your phone number on that.
Oh, that's okay. I have it on my website. Yeah.
You do?
All good
Okay.
there.
That's fine.
Yep.
Just checking.
I did think about that. Yeah, I appreciate that though. For this shoot, I only booked the model for a half day, just because that's all that the budget allowed. And so we were really tight on time. We were shooting, I think it was 6 different looks, and only had the model from 9:30 to 2:30, which is not a lot of time. And so we were going as quick as possible. So I wanted my model the moment she showed up to kind of sit down and start getting ready. It also shows photos of the model. For this one, we had a cat in the photo shoot as well. So I've got my little cat model here. And then it also has a mood board. Again, this is something that all throughout the day you can go back to make sure that you're staying consistent with your mood board. And then just a checklist for the model. My stylist was providing everything. So the only thing that I asked my model bring was a nude thong and nude nails. Yeah. So very important, the call sheet. And this goes out. I like to send mine about maybe 3 or 4 days before the shoot. I know some photographers send it the night before the shoot, but as long as everyone has this at least within a week before the shoot is normally pretty good.
That's cool. We're getting a nice comment. Freya says cat handler is the best job title on that list. So I want to be a cat handler.
I was really appreciative of my cat handler. And then again, just because you don't want to waste anyone's time or the limited time that you might have with your model, if you're booking her, make sure that all your lights and everything is set up and ready to go before your team gets there. A mistake that I made early on when I was shooting is I thought in my head that okay, I set up lights as they're doing hair and makeup, right? But it really wasn't great because as I'm setting up lights, I'm not building a relationship with my model. And so then the first time I'm really talking to my model is when she's on set, and then we don't have a relationship, right? And it's really important to build that. So what I do now is I have everything set up and ready to go beforehand. And then that time that they're doing hair and makeup is my time to sit down with the model and talk to her and get to know her, because that connection will show in the photos, right? Yep. Final thing that I'll say about the actual shoot day is lunch. Lunch is super important, and I've had to learn this one the hard way too. So now I make sure that I'm always ordering lunch for my team. And that was a hard one just because that's an expense, right? And if you're working on an extreme budget, let's say you don't have a budget for a shoot and you're paying out of pocket for this, it can be frustrating to have to put out that expense and buy everyone on your team lunch, but it is worth it because if you have a grumpy team, no one is going to do good work, including yourself. So please get your team lunch.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to be hangry on set, that's for sure.
No, yeah. That's taken me a long time to figure out, and I'm glad I finally did. Final thing with your images, make sure that if you're shooting an editorial, you're getting versatile images. So a mix of full body, close-ups, 3/4, and that way when you're laying out all the images, you can kind of feel what's going good together. Another tip, it's really important to tether if you have the ability to do that. So I'm always tethering to capture one as the images are coming in. My team can look at the images, and so I don't have to keep constantly pulling my camera away and showing the back of my camera to a team. They're just seeing all of it and they're on their own, so I get to do my own thing, right? Yep. I'm also having either my assistant or digital tech making sure that all the images are coming in nice and crisp, that the exposure is correct, and that everything's looking good. So there is this element of trust that because you can't see the images, right? Unless you're going and you're looking on your computer. But that's why you have a good assistant or digital tech to kind of rely on them, and they're your eyes, right?
Yeah, give you the heads up. Do you have anything else to share on screen?
I have one more thing, and I will go very quick with it.
No, it's okay. It's just when you're sharing screen, it breaks your picture up a little bit. So Freya mentioned pizza makes everyone tired. So be aware
good
of that.
meals too. That's smart.
And James Burnett asks, best snacks to bring on a shoot?
Ooh, high protein. I would say almonds. I guess almonds aren't very fun. Also, make sure that you talk to your team beforehand. If you're not ordering lunch and you're providing it there, making sure that all dietary restrictions are covered. For example, Alastair, you and I are vegans. I know it'd be heartbreaking if we show up to a shoot and there's no food for us, right?
Absolutely. It's, Freya also said the only snack models tend to eat, she finds, is granola bars or prepackaged food. So
Yeah. Having a variety is good. And then if you are ordering, letting them choose themselves is always easiest, I find.
yeah, but it's so important to check on dietary needs, as you mentioned, both you and I being vegan. It's just such a sign of professionalism when someone understands when you're somewhere, say, hey, we know you're vegan, here's, we made sure we catered for you, and it just sets the mood. It's really great when people do that. You shared your phone number on screen there, and I'm surprised nobody phoned you just to play with you while we're on it.
Nope.
But Ella Grace Bell said, calling Emily now. Hi,
Oh,
Ella.
that makes me happy.
Yeah, just
Hi,
wanted
Ella.
to
I'll pick up the phone soon and talk to her.
wanted to get her name on screen because we miss you, Ella. Hopefully we can get together soon. So I put a last call out for questions because we are getting close to the end, but we're going to share this shoot that you mentioned, which actually I mentioned it earlier, which was the Elecrom shoot, which is on screen now.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, here we go. So these are all the unretouched versions. So I do, and now I'm hiring retouchers when I'm doing campaign work. Pratik, who was in here earlier, is kind of Pratik and Dennis, my go-to retouchers for that. And I'm not doing a ton of manipulation though, right? So I'm staying away. If I'm retouching it myself, I'm staying away from liquify. There's not a ton that I'm doing. I like to keep it very subtle. You can see my settings over here for what I did for this image. I'm mostly just adding in some very nice contrast. And I can show you what I did for color grading. Again, it's all very, very little tweaks that kind of add on top of each other and make an image nice. Something really helpful to do during the shoot, let's say during a wardrobe change or a makeup change, anything like that, when you have time to look at the images, is go through and start rating them as you go. And so I'm just going to show you a couple of these. Let's say this image, I'm like, not quite. This image, maybe. And so all my maybes, I'll put 1 star. And so I'm just hitting 1 on my keyboard, and you can see down here that there's just a 1. And I go throughout my entire process and I do that. So once I've gone through all the images and they have 1 star, then I do 2 star. And then I go through them again. And then let's say I want a different set, then you can also do color tags, both in Capture One and in Lightroom. So I'm going to press 6, and that's going to give that a red tag. So that's just a really helpful way to kind of stay organized and figure out the images you like. And then if you're doing this at the shoot, you can also figure out what your team thinks as well, which is, helpful. Final thing, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen before I stop talking, is talk about Caviar. So we were talking about getting published. Caviar is a really helpful site that shows all these different magazines that are accepting submissions, and it tells you exactly what their guidelines are. So different magazines have different requirements for how many looks you want, what the image sizes are going to be, how they want them labeled. Also, for fashion editorial, you don't want to use just one designer, right? You want your 6 different looks to have a bunch of different names in there. Or if you're doing a beauty editorial, you want different makeup products. So very helpful site for anyone looking to get published. And now I am going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, I'm just going to post the link to Caviar in the chat in case anybody's interested in that. It's a great site.
Yeah, very, very helpful.
A great site for inspiration as well. There's just lots of great visuals in there. Dan Palin asks, do you ever do shoots without getting them retouched or without retouching?
I don't, because for me, retouching is like polishing an image, right? And I want all of my images to look polished. So the only work that I don't retouch is my street photography or any photojournalism work. And then there is 0 retouching done to it, right? Because that is unethical.
Indeed. So there you go. And you work with 2 of the best, Pratik and Dennis, incredible retouchers. So I'm
very, very lucky.
Glad that they joined us here today.
Yeah. I think there's this idea of retouching that it's completely manipulating or transforming an image. That's never what I want to do, right? It's taking away any distractions and making the key elements stand out, right? So for me, that's going to be eyes, features, the wardrobe. Also, if there's anything to fix with the wardrobe, maybe this dress has like a certain fabric bulge in it, then I think that's fine to liquefy that in, but keeping it as realistic as possible.
Yep. Yeah, Freya, she uses two, as I say, two of the best retouchers. She was asking, do you use retouchers? Pratik Naik and Dennis Dunbar, go check them out, incredible. But Freya also came back with a little trick. She says, use Instagram and the web to make sure that magazine accounts are legit.
Yes.
And not buying followers. She's been tricked once by that. So yeah, definitely do your research.
Super disappointing. And normally you can check with the engagement of them. So like there was a magazine that recently reached out to me and they're like, hey, we want you to do an editorial for us. And I went to their Instagram and they had like 50,000 followers. And at first I was like, And then I checked their engagement and it was like, even though they had 50,000 followers, they were getting like 200 likes per image. So that's a good telltale sign that they're not real.
Yeah. I put a final call out for questions because we are getting wrapped up here, unfortunately. But Gary Monroe asks, other areas of photography you'd like to try or get into that you've shown a lot of different type of work today, but is there anything you'd like to try?
Yeah, the next thing that I really want to get into my work is beauty photography, which of course is related to fashion. And I've been doing a lot more beauty shoots this year, but it's still it's another area, right? So getting into like macro beauty, all of that. And I'll be honest and say that I don't have the same passion for beauty photography that I do for fashion photography, but I know that then there's a lot of clients that want beauty photography. And if they come to me, then they know I shoot that too. And it's still related. So it feels within my wheelhouse.
Well, we will look forward to seeing some of that beauty work.
I've got a lot that I just haven't posted yet, so I should probably do this week.
So you've already been photographing some. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun challenge.
Yeah. We haven't spoke about your home studio, but there's a great little video that you did with Adorama TV that highlights your kind of home setup. So I would encourage people to go check that out. I'm assuming it's on Adorama TV on YouTube. They can find that. And I love some of the kind of daily routine that both you and Brandy have. Your entire day is kind of creative. You get up in the morning at 1 p.m. and have breakfast, and then you're working, you're doing shoots, but you really push each other, you motivate each other. And I've been watching Brandy doing her watercolor work, painting, and then you're on the roof doing, just inspiring each other. Just your entire day is consumed with creativity, right?
Yeah, it's so, I can't rave about Brandy enough, just because it's so helpful to have someone that is constantly pushing you and inspiring you. And we do that for each other. The other night we were on the roof and I kind of just hit a wall with creativity. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to head downstairs. And she's like, what if? She's like, what if you tell me, like, who are the celebrities that you want to shoot someday? And I was like, I listed a couple off. And then she's like, but why them, right? And so then I started really thinking about it. And then I started making a bigger list about all, not celebrities just in the sense of like actors or musicians, but activists in the world or scientists, all these different people that are doing great work that I want to photograph. And so I got a massive list down, but just kind of an example of like, whenever we start being like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, because we run into that resistance all the time. It's those moments that we can help each other and be like, no, we are doing this. This is our goal, and setting new goals too. Yeah.
Going to finish up, but I want to ask you, you and I are both very fortunate to work in an industry that we both love so much, the photography industry. I've been in for over 20 years, I hate to say it, but had a wonderful time. And how would you like to see the industry change? What are your hopes?
I mean, this is a basic one, but just the way that women are treated within the industry, right? And I was asked a few years ago, like, being a woman in the photography industry, like, how is that? And at the time I was 19 when I did this interview, and I was like, it's great. Like, it's such a wonderful industry. Everyone's so nice and it's just all good, you know, because all my experiences had been good. And then in the past couple of years, as I start working on bigger shoots, as I start working with more people, you know, there have been some very frustrating situations that, because I'm both a woman and because I'm young, you know, I just know that I don't always get treated with the respect that I deserve. And so I hope over time that changes. Also, just looking at the top fashion photographers, right? They're mostly all men, and there's some amazing female fashion photographers, but it's very dominated by men still. Both the commercial advertising world. So I'm hopeful that that changes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry long enough to know when it wasn't just dominated; it was almost exclusively male.
Right.
And you know, we've come a long way, but it's still only a fraction of where we need to get to. And you know, I know you're very supportive and outspoken in having those dreams that the industry changes. So you have all our support, and you know, I'm sure all of us working. I know that so many of us in this chat today, or this morning, wherever you are in the world, we're all part of the one community. Many of us know each other personally, and together we're making changes. We are the driving the path of how we want this industry to go, and you know, hopefully together we can all do that, and hopefully we can all get together soon and be together and have real life interactions. But it's been an absolute blast having you on today. I've
Thank
thoroughly
you so
enjoyed this.
much. I'm so glad I had more than just like 10 minutes worth to talk about.
No, we've done an hour and a half, so
That's crazy. That
that's
went fast.
excellent, and we could probably sit here and do hours more, which we typically do in real life. But you know, just thank you to everybody who joined the chat and asked questions today. We deeply, deeply miss you all. We wish we could be together. Hopefully, I can convince some of you to come and join me on the channel and have the conversation that similar to what Emily and I have just had. So watch out. I might be reaching out to some of you soon. What's next for you, Emily? What's the rest of your morning
Yeah.
going to bring?
There's just a bunch of different projects, and I finally decided that it's time to start looking at the future and figuring out when I can shoot again, when I can do that safely, which includes like stylists dropping clothes off beforehand. So it's going to be different, but it's time to start shooting again.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look after yourself wherever you are. Thank you so much to everybody that posted questions, who answered questions, and who interacted with each other in the chat. That's always so special to see. You can do me a big favor by doing a few things for me. You can hit the subscribe button, subscribe to this channel, hit the little bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here on SmugMug Live. You know, if you've enjoyed this chat, please like the video, give it a little thumbs up, and we'd really appreciate that. Thursday, a couple of days yet. And Thursday we are going to be joined, as I said at the top of the show, by Steve Brazel, incredible live music gigging photographer. If you've ever wanted to know what the rules are, what you can and can't do when you're shooting a live gig, something I would love to do, then join us for Steve, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday. So that will be Emily's morning, 1 p.m. time, and my time, 6 p.m. here in Scotland in the UK. So thank you, Emily, so much. I really, really appreciate it. I miss you, miss so many of you. And hopefully we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for your time. Wherever you are in the world, everybody, stay safe, be kind, look after each other, and we will catch you soon back here on SmugMug Live for some more conversation with the best photographers in the world. Have a great day, and we'll speak to you all soon. Bye for now. Bye. Bye, Emily.
Bye.